Barry. Welcome to Into the Dark, where I discuss all things dark, twisted, mysterious, and scary, and relay them in story form. If that sounds like your kind of content, then you've come to the right place. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure to hit that bell notification so you can get notified whenever a new video is uploaded. In today's video, we're going to discuss the man who answered the door. This is the Knight Family Massacre. On April 25th, 1958, Varian Ashbaugh, a 47-year-old contractor, met with his attorney, 47-year-old Merrill Knight. Ashbaugh had a contract that he needed some help with, so Knight told him to mail all of the paperwork that he needed him to look at to his address before he left for Las Vegas with his family for a vacation that upcoming Saturday. Piddling around, Ashbaugh forgot, lost track of time, and didn't mail everything. But not that big a deal. He just decided that whenever he was going to the Knight's neighbor's house, the Wilsons, later on that evening for a dinner party, he would just stop and hand deliver the paperwork. When Ashbaugh arrives at the Knight's later on that evening, he goes up, knocks on the door, and a young man answers who he doesn't recognize. Even though Ashbaugh didn't recognize him, he said he seemed very polite, very calm. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. He talked to him, asked him if Mr. Knight was home. The young man told him, yeah, he is, but he's upstairs taking a bath. He asked, is Mrs. Knight home? He says she is, but she's busy right now. So, not wanting to intrude any further, Ashbaugh assumes that this guy must be someone that the Knights have hired so that he can watch over the property while they're gone to vacation in Las Vegas. So he asked the guy, can you deliver this paperwork to Mr. Knight for me? It's very important that he get it today. Guy says no problem. He thanks him, he leaves, he goes next door to the Wilsons to continue on with his dinner party. Unbeknownst to Varian Ashbaugh, he had just come face to face with a dangerous psychopath. Now we're going to back up a little bit. 2 days prior, on April 22nd, 29-year-old David F. Early was released from Fort Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary. He'd been serving hard time there for aggravated robbery. David Early was actually a distant relative of Mr. Knight, who you'll hear in some reports refer to Mr. Knight as his uncle. Mr. Knight had actually previously represented David Early in one of his trials. It's relatively well assumed that Mr. Knight felt some sort of a pity or an obligation with David Early being his family and decided to stay in contact with him while he was serving his sentence, actually even telling him, hey, whenever you get out, if you'll come home to Colorado, I'll actually help you get on your feet and get your life well established. David Early actually put in his pre-release paper to the parole board that he intended to go home to his home state of Colorado where his uncle lived, describing Mr. Knight as, quote, the only friend I've ever had. On April 25th, David Early took a cab to the Greenwood Village suburbs to the Knight family home. Whenever he gets there, all of the doors are locked and no one's home. So he goes around and he's looking through windows and trying door handles, and eventually he discovers that the basement door is not locked. So he goes into the home and immediately he starts rifling through things, trying to find things that he can steal, looking for cash, jewelry, anything that he can take to a pawn shop later on to get some money out of. And at one point he comes up to a closet and discovers a .22 caliber bolt-action rifle in the closet. At this point, he grabs the rifle, loads it, goes into the living room, opens a pack of cigarettes, and begins chain smoking while he's waiting for the Knights to return home at the end of the day. At some point, Mrs. Knight is the first to return. When she walks in, she's immediately caught off guard by Early, who's standing there holding this rifle pointed right at her head, forces her into a bedroom and binds her legs and her hands. Then he tells her, I'm not here to hurt anyone, all I need is money. Asks her, do you have any money? And she says, there's $60 in my purse. He goes and he retrieves the $60. Then he comes back and starts yelling at her saying, this is not enough money. While this is happening, her two stepchildren enter the house. Immediately they see what's going on and go into a panic, and they're so shocked by the severity of the situation, which no one sees coming, and they're froze with fear, so they don't even try to run. Early takes 15-year-old Karen, takes her to her room, and ties her up to the bed. Then he takes, at gunpoint, 17-year-old Kenneth, takes him to the same room with his mother, and ties him to the foot of the bed that she's tied to. At this point, around 5:30 to 5:45, Mr. Merrill Knight shows up. He's immediately met at the front door with this bolt-action .22 caliber rifle, and he's led at gunpoint to another room, and he's told to sit on the floor, and then David Early tells him to tie up his own feet. He tells him to get on his stomach, and he's just about to tie up his feet whenever he notices his wallet in his back pocket. So he actually takes his wallet out and gets another $127 out of Mr. Knight's wallet. Then he ties up Mr. Knight's arms behind his back. He continues going through the house, and he actually collects another $77 from around the house. Early actually told the Knights that as long as they were calm and compliant and didn't make any noise, that as soon as nightfall came, he would actually just leave. They would still be tied up, everyone would survive, and no one would be hurt. This is around the time that Varian Ashbaugh shows up to deliver his papers to Mr. Knight. Although Varian Ashbaugh's interaction with David Early was pretty uneventful, and had it not been for what took place after all this, would probably be forgotten, it did come with some heavy consequences. It was during this time, while David Early was distracted speaking to Ashbaugh, that Mr. Knight decided it's a good time to try to get all these bindings off of my legs and my hands. So he struggled for several minutes while Early was preoccupied at the front door, and actually was able to untangle his bindings. And when Early closed the front door after talking to Ashbaugh and comes back into the house, Mr. Knight is waiting for him. So David Early comes into the room, and he's surprised. Mr. Knight jumps at him, trying to tackle him, get the gun away from him so that he can protect his family, because how do you know if you can trust this guy? Is he really going to just slip out of here at dark and leave us alone? We've all seen his face. He's my kin. I know exactly who he is. He's just going to go right back to prison, and he just got out 2 days ago. Why should we trust him? So Knight jumps on Early, and before he can get to him, Early just starts firing. He hits him 3 times, fatal wounds that he would later on succumb to that evening. At this point, Early knows he's got no choice. Now, not only is this just aggravated robbery, he's actually killed a man. And it's going to get traced back to him. All of these witnesses know who he is. They actually know his name. He has no choice but to make sure there are no witnesses. So he walks into the room where Regina Knight, the mother, and the oldest son, Kenneth, are in. He steps over Kenneth's legs and takes one shot to the head, killing Regina instantly. Then, for some reason, instead of turning and killing Kenneth, he steps back over his legs and goes down the hallway to another room and shoots his 15-year-old sister. One shot to the head, and she was gone. While this was going on, knowing that now he's in the home alone with a killer, 17-year-old Kenneth freaks out and decides, what choice do I have? I have to try to run from this, or I'm next. He's going to come in here and kill me. So he starts struggling. He was able to get his bindings and stuff broken and actually takes off through the exit door of the house. He's running across the yard when David Early actually fires a shot at his back and just barely misses him. He's about to take another shot, and miraculously, the gun jams. Next door at the Wilsons, Varian Ashbaugh is at that planned dinner party. They're all sitting there, several couples just enjoying meals and drinks. Kenneth bursts through the door and screams, "Mother and Dad have been shot." Several of the men at the dinner party immediately get up, scramble outside. They can see a car across in the Knight's drive pulling out. So Varian Ashbaugh and another man from the party actually go and get into their car and take off in pursuit. Panicking as they're getting closer and closer to this car, trying to think, what are we going to do if we actually catch this guy? We have no weapons, and we know that he's armed. All they had in their vehicle was a shotgun, which was unloaded, and they had no ammunition to load it. They were helpless, but in a courageous act of heroism, They ram this guy's car, push him off the road. He jumps out, and they immediately lunge on top of him as he's trying to run away and tackle him to the ground. It's about this point that other people from the dinner party show up, and someone grabs that empty shotgun and points it at the head of David Early. Now, he doesn't know that this is an unloaded weapon. He just assumes that it's loaded. And so it's at that point that he stops squirming and trying to get away. So the police show up to arrest David Early, and whenever they show up, it's a very, very grim situation. Kenneth Knight is there watching all this unfold, watching the police take him into custody, knowing his entire family is gone. You know, his life as he knew is essentially over. His father was still alive, but would later succumb to those wounds that evening. His sister and his mother had perished instantly. When the police get there and they're actually arresting David Early, a local newspaper reporter shows up and questions David Early. "Sir, why did you do this?" And he responded, "Because I needed the money." At 7:59, August 11th, 1961, David Early, having been sentenced 2 years earlier to death, was led into a gas chamber. The door closed behind him, and at 8:07 p.m., he was pronounced dead. Well, that's all today, folks. If you have any comments or questions about today's story, please feel free. I would love for you to put those comments and questions or any details that you want to add into the comments down below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and share this video with all of the armchair detectives in your life. Until next time, this is Barry, signing off.